Good afternoon. I'm going to talk to you about some work that we've been doing in the accounts in the Red Sea, based on some autonomous reef monitoring structures, arms. Basically, they're used as a standardised approach to monitoring marine benthic organisms. I'm going to be talking about some metabarcoding applications that we've been doing with them. So typically, if you're studying hard benthic substrates, you do diver-operated morphological-based approaches to target mainly the large and conspicuous organisms, like your corals and your fish on the reef structure. So this misses out quite a few of the organisms that are actually present. So you've got these small cryptic taxa that are often neglected because they're hidden within the reef structures. And also they're actually hard to identify taxonomically. You require various specialists per taxa to actually identify them accurately. So we're wondering, can molecular methodologies actually be used to try and assess these? So what we did is we deployed arms units, as you can see on the top right, for a year, and then once we retrieved them, we did photo identification of the sessile fraction, size fractionated the mobile fraction, and then did some metabarcoding on both size fractions. So first of all, I'm going to do this is based on work in the Red Sea at the moment, some comparisons between the traditional methods, so your reef survey methods, and some methods undertaken with arms, so both photo ID and the metabarcoding. And this here shows basically the taxa that you get from the three different methods are completely different. So you've got your corals in the identification for your morphological, but then you're getting your annelids and also your protists in the metabarcoding. But the metabarcoding also is able to detect some fine-scale differences. Also, then we've moved on to looking at using arms throughout the whole of the European seas. So you've got 5 different European seas and the Red Sea to assess the benthic cryptic diversity. So preliminary analysis, just looking at the observed OTU, so your operational taxonomic units, you get high diversity in the Mediterranean and the Red Sea, but the Black Sea is significantly lower in diversity. But this is just looking at a number of OTUs present. If you move on to looking at the composition, you can also see there's significant differences between the seas. You've got, this is looking at the whole arms units together, so all size fractions compared. And if you move on to then looking at the size fractionation, you'll see a complete difference as well. So if you look on the Baltic Sea, it's dominated by your Arthropoda and your annelids. But if you move on to, say, the Adriatic Sea and the sessile fraction here, you've got your annelids and your mollusks. Then the Black Sea is dominated by bryozoans, and you've got your Purifera in your sessile fraction within the Red Sea. But you can also see there's actually differences between the size fraction, as you would expect. So you've got your encrusting Purifera, for example, in the Red Sea, but then within the mobile fractions, you've got your differences. And then if you look at distance matrices, so we undertook Braycards and the Jacquard distance matrices, you found that within a region, size fractions actually clustered more together, but there's distinct differences between the different seas. So it seems regional scale differences are more important. So quickly looking at the comparison of diversity patterns, we found that if you look at the diversity patterns between all the size fractions, they actually show very similar patterns, as suggested that this was more difference between the regional scale for all of them, and they cluster together. So a quick conclusion of this part is, so the various methods of looking at benthic diversity are complementary. Regional scale differences prevail over the local scale, and there's similar diversity patterns for all the size fractions that we measured. But there are also challenges with the metabarcoding approaches, as Roberto referred to earlier on. And we tried to look at some of these with some work we did based again in the Red Sea specifically. And so one of the main approaches is, as Roberto mentioned, was the problem with live reefs. The stuff that's been morphologically identified is not always the same as what you've got in the reference molecular database. They don't overlap really, and especially for organisms like protists, you get a molecular database but you don't have any reference morphology. Also, there's primers, which primers do you use? So most people these days use mitochondrial COI or 18S for the eukaryotic. Prokaryotic biofilms, for example, are targeted with 18S ribosomal RNA, but there's no real consensus on what to use. And so the CI is generally better thought of as looking at species level assignments, but the database there is biased towards the Arthropoda, whereas the 18S is more conserved. It's not as good as targeting species level, but it's better at assigning different taxa. So like protists are better represented in 18S databases. So here are some results that we got looking at comparisons between the two primer sets. We found high diversity within the COI dataset, which is not a surprise considering it targets species level better. There were differences in the composition between the two primer sets, so you've got different taxa represented, but they actually showed similar patterns overall. So finally, I'd like to acknowledge everyone that helped with the data sets and mention that all the pictures were actually what we found in our ARMS data sets in CAUST. Thank you.